Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Emerging Technologies Using Cloud-Based Solutions, brought to you by Timothy Buckles of Simons Agency. Please be aware that there will be a question-answer portion today at the end of the webinar. To avoid frequent interruptions during the webinar, please type your questions in the question box located on the right of your screen. They will be answered in the order received during the question-answer portion. Additionally, an electronic version of this presentation will be emailed to all participants following completion of today's webinar, and a recorded version will be available on the website behind the members-only firewall. Again, NJMGMA would like to thank you for attending, and I will now turn things over to Tim.
All right, well, thank you, and I appreciate everyone showing up today. I'd like to welcome everyone to Emerging Technologies Using Cloud-Based Solutions. As an introduction kind of said, my name is Tim Buckles. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Simons Agency. I have about 25 years of experience working with Fortune 500 companies, working across corporate strategy, development, and design. So today what we're going to be talking about for our agenda is we're going to be talking about what is the cloud. We're going to talk about who are the players that are really influencing the cloud today. We're going to talk about emerging trends that are also influencing some of those factors. We're going to talk about the benefits and considerations of going on to the cloud. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Moore's Law. We're going to talk a little bit about some cloud-based models that are out there and how they can be implemented. Then we're going to go through some case studies that are going to show how each of these were implemented over here at our company, so you can kind of get a feel for how to do it with yours. Then we're going to relate it back to the healthcare industry, and we're going to talk about what are the emerging technologies that are influencing your industry. And at the very end, we're going to open it up for questions and answers. The main goal of this presentation that I really like everyone to be able to come away with is, one is a general overview of what is the cloud and its capabilities, the benefits that are out there, but really how to think through the thought process about how to consider that and implement it within your own organizations. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So the cloud, it's infrastructure as a service is how you should think of it. So infrastructure as a service is a new concept that's out there, or it's a buzzword that's out there that really addresses a couple of things. It's really taking the technologies of your hardware systems, your software systems, the services that your people provide, and it actually outsources it out to a third-party provider, and it has the ability to really kind of provide it to your organization at a cheaper, more cost-effective method than actually housing it inside your own buildings. And the main benefit off of this is it allows you to have access anywhere over the entire internet as long as you have connectivity. So one of the things that we find is that under the traditional model, our brick and mortar system, here's how it's basically set up today, and most people will understand this, is that you have server administrators, you have IT systems, you have hardware systems that are out there. So those things were always housed, within the company. You also had programmers, database architects. So the hardware, the software systems, your support people, those were all things that had to be considered with your overall company architecture. Your support people would take care of people within your organization, while at the same time, your hardware and software engineers were out there trying to make sure that you had enough server capacity, you had enough processing power, you had enough speed, that your software systems were all up to date. That's the traditional model. So let's take a look at what the new paradigm is going to become. And this is where you take that concept of infrastructure as a service. And so what this is doing is it's taking those concepts of your hardware systems, your software systems, the services that your people are providing, and they're basically outsourcing it so that if you have different locations, and in this case, if you took a look like a place of New York, Chicago, and London, you may have 3 different areas that you have to provide facilities for that all have different capabilities that are required. The nice part about the cloud is it allows you to really custom tailor each of these locations to allow you to scale up or down based on the needs of those areas. So if you have a location that requires faster processing power, it can allocate that as a resource. If you have another area that just requires more storage, it can allocate it to that area as a resource. If you have more needs in terms of the services that are provided by information technology or information service people, so your programmers and your hardware people, that's all housed in the remote location, and it's as easy as the user defining what their needs are and having that built out for you versus trying to require that expertise in-house. So that's one of the most powerful things that I think we can see there, and it's really being influenced with artificial intelligence, allowing those 3 different areas to be leveraged, both going up and down. So some of the players that are out there today that are influencing this, if you take a look at Amazon, Amazon controls about 37% of the market. Microsoft controls about 28%. Google is about 16%. So the 3 of these combined control over 80% of the entire market right now. So these are going to be the 3 players right now that are really going to be defining the platforms about where it's going and where it's going to be emerging to. And most likely they will probably either adapt or acquire some of the smaller players that you see over there. The smaller players will be out there, but they're basically going to be the ones that are going to be following the platform of the top 3. And some of the trends that you may want to understand that are out there. So mobile devices, so phones, your iPads, those are things that are influencing it today. So one of the stats that we had out there is that within the next 3 to 4 years, there'll probably be about 70% of the world population that will have these mobile devices. So you're looking at about 6.1 billion devices that are going to be out there. So what you're seeing now is that you have a trend now of immediate gratification of people that have these mobile devices that are really having the ability to stream based on the internet bandwidth that we're seeing out there right now. We're seeing faster transmission speeds. We're seeing the ability to go ahead and go across fiber. We're seeing the ability to go ahead and get this information much faster at our fingertips. Storage. Storage has just dropped down to the floor in terms of what its cost is. So, in the old days, a terabyte of information used to be only at companies that were sized, at $1 billion or more to be able to kind of afford that level of space. Nowadays, you'll take a look at, you can go out and get yourself a MyBook and you can get 4 to 6 terabytes on it, for a couple $100. So space is just extremely cheap out there right now. Processing speed. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's a concept of Moore's Law that we'll talk a little bit about. And the processing speed, what it's saying is that it's increasing faster and faster every single year, or the price is going to start dropping on it each year. Scalability. This is being driven by your artificial intelligence capabilities out there. The scalability in artificial intelligence is actually taking those top pieces, mobile devices, the internet bandwidth, the storage space, the processing speed, and it's able to scale across those devices your needs up and down based on what your needs are. And so if you're able to go ahead and have that implemented, you can actually tailor to each of your different facilities, each of your different locations based on what their needs are. So not everyone's created equal. And then the other part is the third-party expertise. They're getting really good at not only housing the data, but taking care of your storage needs. So in the old days where you had servers to go ahead and support within your building, that can actually be outsourced to your third party. The ability to have programs, same thing, housed by your third party. The services that you need to be able to scale up and down to your organization is all housed at, by the third party. So I no longer require to have to handle a lot of that HR element within my own organization. I can actually outsource that, and really as a user I can define what my needs are and let them go and execute it. And then the last piece is the affordability. That what we've seen is that probably 3 to 5 years ago this wasn't as much of an affordable option as it is today. And so as we go through some of our case study things later on, we'll talk about things that we couldn't consider a few years ago that we've actually been able to bring in-house and execute today, just because it's got much more affordable and it has had many more benefits that we were looking forward to using within our organization. Okay, so some of these things you're going to obviously be exposed to and used to using today. If you take a look on your mobile devices, people are all familiar with the iTunes, you're familiar with Netflix, Amazon. So, conceptually what you're looking at is a broader part of the population that has these mobile devices. You have the ability to stream information, large amounts of information. Internet speed. So this allows us to develop applications and have applications and transmit speeds that we've never been able to do before. If you take a look at the storage, you have concepts of Google Drive and you have concepts like Dropbox that you're going to see a stronger concept now in collaborative sharing. Things like Carbonite, which is basically off-site remote storage. You also take a look at the different providers, AT&T, Sprint, Apple, right? So basically on your wireless devices right now, your mobile devices right now, you can store that information up on the cloud, and then if you lose the device or the device is broken, you simply get another device and you download everything back on to your device from the cloud. So we're exposed to a lot of these things today. So here's some of the benefits that I want you to be able to consider and be able to take away from, the presentation today, is that, the mobile devices, what this really does for us is it gives us 24/7 access. It gives the users 24/7 access, not only for the organizations that's using it, but also think about, who your client is, who your audience is, basically, that you interact with on a daily basis. So processing speeds. So what we're seeing here is large amounts of information that are able to be transmitted back and forth faster than, what we've seen in the past. And storage. So storage is one of the things that, in terms of price, has come way down. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, you can take a look at the ability to control your processing speeds and your storage capabilities by user requirement, almost on the fly. So it's a constant evaluation process that allows it to go ahead and take a look at your organization and its needs. And instead of having to go back and redesign your system architecture, it has the ability to scale up and scale down based on what your need is. So bandwidth. So bandwidth, with the use of, going more towards fiber optics, what we're seeing is that, services and things that were provided to us in the past that, where we looked at, 50 megabytes of throughput going back and forth on our systems, we're seeing 10 to 20 times that size being offered at, less cost and less prices than what I saw probably 5 years ago. So bandwidth is becoming extremely cheap too, and that means the pipeline of how we're transmitting things back and forth is becoming very, very easy to send things back and forth, and so gives us a lot more capabilities than what we've ever had in the past. Affordability. So one size doesn't fit anymore. One size doesn't fit all anymore in terms of what we're looking at. So affordability, again, we're going to take a look at this concept of Moore's Law, that what we're seeing is that the prices are either going down, or for the same price, I'm getting more capability, more speed, more processing power than what we had seen in the past. Scalability. So again, artificial intelligence is helping out a lot in this area. This is a scalability in terms of servers, processing speed, services that are required for our people, and allowing to scale up and down based on the needs of our organization. So if your organization has explosive growth going on, it's different than your traditional model that you had to go out and buy more physical hardware, buy more physical equipment, go out and hire more people. All you're doing is really kind of expanding your services that's on the cloud already. So they have the ability to scale with your organization both up and down. And then third party. So here's where the third party is developing a lot more expertise in being able to house the servers, the software, the services that your people provide today. It's not meant to replace all of your people, but it's meant to go in there and take a look at not having to house the expertise, really defining more about how the user needs to have it defined and what their needs are, and letting that platform be able to execute based on the needs of the user. And it's a different model than what you look at in the past, where you would have had to have more in-house expertise to really help the user define that, build it out, architect that out, and you had people at varying skill levels. The nice part about the cloud is that you have people at a very, very high level of expertise that's being outsourced to, so you know it's going to be done right the first time. So Moore's Law. So there's a gentleman by the name of Gordon Moore, and back in the 60s he noticed that there was a trend or a change in the industry that said that the processing speed and the processing power either doubled in speed or dropped in cost about every 2 years. And that was a pretty fundamental change out in the industry, that it means that things are moving faster and quicker, that you have to adapt every single year. And it's going to be interesting as we kind of take a look at the presentation that, as I kind of take a look at my organization, I take a look at how we need to adapt, that this paradigm about how fast things are changing is the same expectation that we're going to see on the cloud, that the hardware systems, the software systems, the software that's being outsourced out there, the services that they're providing, the pressure that's going to be put on those is that they're going to have to improve or increase the abilities of what they give you, or drop in price almost every single year. And so that becomes very fundamental for us, because as an organization, we don't have the luxury to look over and see the competitors coming, 10, 20 years out. With the event of social media and how fast things are changing on the industry and how fast technology is changing, you may have 1 to 2 years to react to your competition. You may have months to react to your competition. the ability to react to shifts of how the consumer base is handling out there. We'll talk about here in just a minute. But if you take a look at the advent of high deductible plans and how that applies to the industry out there, it's a shift of, negotiating with insurance companies used to be the main focus or the main cause of what people had to worry about. And with high deductible plans, it shifted to a consumer base. And so what that means is that's a shift of mobile devices. And we'll talk about how that technology is going to play a role in that. And the fact that this fundamental shift moving over to the consumers is a big deal, because now you have people that need to have the ability to shop what they want to do. They like to be have things more customized, more tailored to what it is that they are. So let's go to the next slide. So here's a current snapshot of where the industry is right now. So if you take a look at this, the public cloud, and here's how we're going to define the public cloud. The public cloud is basically servers that you have multiple people that are sharing the services off of one server. So I could have multiple small organizations that don't have the need of a dedicated server. They're willing to share those resources at a little bit more beneficial cost. So about 21% of the market out there is really using what we'll call a public cloud. There's a private cloud out there that about 25% of the industry is out there on. And if you take a look at the private cloud, this is dedicated resources. So this is dedicated people, dedicated services, dedicated software, dedicated servers that are just dedicated to your organization. And so it comes in a little bit higher price tag, but it's a dedication to those resources to that organization. If you take a look at the other one, which is the hybrid model, it's about 45% of the market out there. It's the biggest share. So, bigger than the other two combined. And if you take a look at that, you're really blending the benefit of both of those. So you're kind of blending both cost, and you're blending the ability to leverage where you're okay having shared resources versus things that may be more dedicated. And when I get into one of the case studies, I'll talk to you a little bit about that, because it becomes very interesting about the fundamental question about how fast is fast and how fast do you need it, okay? And so some of these solutions can be really good, but it really depends on what your needs are. And we'll talk through a little bit about the steps that you go through on the evaluation process, that you really need to understand what your question is and what are the things that are really critical to you when you start evaluating what's important on the cloud. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at two cloud-based solutions. We're going to take a look at a brick-and-mortar solution that we kept in-house. We're going to take a look at a fourth solution, which is really a hybrid model that really blends the cloud-based and brick-and-mortar solution together. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what our thought process was that we went through. We'll talk really first about the steps that we go through as an organization, and then what we'll do is we'll take a dive into each of the different categories here on what we looked at, why we looked at it, the considerations that were important to us, that were key factors, and how we kind of landed on what we landed on. So let's go. Okay, so what are the steps that you want to kind of think through? So in our organization, I'm really big on return on investment, and I'm sure anyone that's been out there, if you've ever had any kind of new software, any kind of new implementation, any kind of new add-on to your business organization, or the elimination of something within your business organization, you hear the concept of ROI. So not any different here. So I'm going to make sure I challenge everything that has some type of return on investment to understand what it is that we're looking for. So what defines success? So that's really what you have to kind of look at. Next step is we always want to look at our solutions in threes. So in anything that we take a look at, anything that we implement here in our company, I always like to look at things in threes. I would love to think that all things are created equal. Unfortunately, it's just not the case. So there's been multiple times I'll bring in 3 different vendors that really provide, conceptually the same solution. The costs are always different. The solutions are always different. The platforms are always different. How they present and how they get resourced are all different. So you really have to take that into consideration, but make sure you look at everything in at least threes, right? 3 or more. So you get a good solution to understand what is really kind of out there in terms of pricing and capabilities. Once you do that, right, then you got to sit back and say, okay, what's going to work for you? Which one's good for your organization? And then the other part is, got to go back to your fundamental business question, right? So does it comply with what your requirements are? So what is your need? What is it that you're trying to solve? So certainly I like to make sure that's backed with a return on investment, but I always got to make sure that, as an organization, we really understand what is our business question that we're trying to answer, what's our point of pain that we're trying to solve, and make sure that this really solves all those pieces. And then the next part is, does it fit? So I have to really make sure that, when I sit down with my information technology people, does this fit our platform, right? So we have, you can have 1, 2, 3, 10 different legacy systems that your solution, does it fit with all those? Does it need to fit with all those? What solution does it provide? But does it fit within your organization? Do you have to blow things up to be able to implement it, right? So it may not be the right fit for your solution for the thing that you're taking a look at. So make sure you're always considering, what types of things that you're bringing it into and what is the fit. And then once you have identified all that, then we spend a lot of time negotiating and then counter offering, going back and forth with the vendors that we're talking to or the solutions that we're looking to bring in. So, it's kind of basic 101 stuff. And then once we've negotiated and we landed on a price, we bring it in, we institute it, and then we monitor it to make sure it's doing all the things that we want it to do. And then the last part is I want to make sure that whatever solution we're taking a look at, I want to make sure it's scalable. I'm not going to bring in any solution into my organization that's not going to last me for a pretty decent horizon. So I always wanted to make sure that this solution is at least a 3 to 5 year horizon for a solution that I'm taking a look at. The last thing I want to do is, spend a lot of time, effort, and energy, get a lot of resources in my organization set up to bring in a solution, and then I go back and I find out that it only meets our needs for about a year, and then I got to blow everything up and I got to start all over again. So I try not to do that very much, and I try not to let our people in the organization do that very much. Okay. So those are the steps that we go through. And so in today's environment within our organization, we have about 75% of our organization that we use cloud-based technology, and about 25% of it we still have in-house. And so if you take a look at some of the items below, our phone systems versus traditional phone systems, things like credit reporting, our backup systems, reporting and transparency, marketing and sales, and even our core systems, right? All these things are in different elements of either the cloud, brick and mortar, or in some cases are a hybrid system. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a few of these now and talk through them. Okay, so the first one I thought that would be interesting to talk about was, we built a brand new building probably a couple years ago, and we had to put in a phone system. So we have to be able to make sure that we can actually call it out. We had some requirements that we really kind of needed. And at that time, you guys spend a little bit of time getting educated about, where has phone technology gone? And it's gone all over the place. There's a ton of things that are out there. So we looked at traditional systems, we looked at Avaya phone systems, we looked at a lot of different pieces off of this. And what we found out was a couple of things, is that the traditional phone systems were extremely expensive. Whether you leased it or whether you bought it, it just wasn't a good solution. It was a huge dollar of upfront cost. It was very, very hard to scale on both hardware and software. So as we kept taking a look at it, we looked at the implementation windows. We actually did try an implementation over 3 to 4 months of bringing in a phone system. We brought in the software, and we tried to make sure it matched up to our legacy systems and our servers that we had on site here. And it was just very clunky. It just didn't work for us. It had lags in time, and it had constant updates, and these are big players that are out in the industry. So we took a look at that, and then we took a look at the cloud-based systems. And some of the things that we liked about the cloud-based systems is it was very easy to install. So where we were looking at a traditional phone system that was taking months of time of people, time, programming, and resources coming into our company. And we started in February, and we were still playing around with it in June of 2016. And finally, we decided to pull the plug on it, and we went to a cloud-based solution, and we were able to implement it in less than about 2 to 3 weeks. And so we found that it was a very simple solution to install. It was a very scalable solution that if I wanted to add more people, it was simply turning on more licenses. We went, instead of hard phones, we went to a soft phone environment. So as long as someone had a computer on their desk, they had the ability to have a phone, and gave them a headset. They were up and running. So I didn't have to get another physical piece of hardware. I didn't have to get another physical phone jack. I didn't have to do anything different. I was able to very simply scale that up. And again, it's a 100% cloud-based solution off of that, where it gave me the ability to scale, had ease of implementation, and it was very cost-effective for us. So it also gave us the ability to have redundancy. So, in our organization, we obviously do collections, and, so we're basically a large call center. And so when you take a look at what is important to us, we can't be down. And so we allowed us to have two different, cloud-based systems for redundancy. So, if on a phone system, AT&T goes down, then I'm shut down, and it's going to start costing me tens of thousands of dollars an hour, and I can't be down that long. On a cloud-based system, I had a couple different internet pipelines that come into my company. So if one internet line goes down, it automatically fails over to the other one, so I'm always up and running. If one system goes down, my redundant one comes back on up, and I'm still up and running. So, it gets down to the question of, how long could we be down? And in our case, I can't be down more than an hour. I just can't. I don't want to be down an hour. I don't want to be down a minute. So when we took a look at our solution, it was simple, it was scalable, ease of implementation, ease of execution. It is allowing us now to actually merge with additional technologies that are out there. So our phone systems today now can go ahead and merge with systems like CallMiner that actually do text recognition on the overall systems. And so it allows us to go ahead and look for opportunities in terms of both liabilities of things that are happening on phone calls versus opportunities to make things better. So the cloud has allowed us to go ahead and do that within our phone systems. And, I think it was a pretty good system. It's a pretty elegant system. So for anyone that's looking to do that, I'd probably highly recommend, looking to more of a cloud-based system because it's just easier. And it's one of those things that gets you away from it. Yeah, people don't physically have a phone on their desk, but it works. So let's go to the next one. So the second one was marketing and sales. So this one was a little bit easier for us because we didn't have a legacy system, right? So I had no point of reference. So in this case, we looked at a cloud-based solution. It allowed us to do a few things. So with one solution, I was allowed to go ahead and have a solution that came in that tackled our website, our social media, our ability to engage in blogging and social media technologies, and allowed to manage our CRM system for our sales force. So with one investment in one system, I was able to integrate a lot of different technologies into one footprint. And from a platform, it allowed us to integrate with our Google G Suite, which we use here in our company. So there were a lot of benefits of being able to do that. It also gave us mobility. So in this case, the mobility for our sales staff and our marketing staff to get access to this information no matter where they were on any mobile device that they had. So if they had an iPad, if they've got a tablet, if they had phones, they have access to all this information 24/7. And the nice part about this is it requires minimal staffing. So most of my resources are up on the cloud. So it's as easy as basically having a conference call with them, letting them know what our needs are of the organization, what we need to do, and when it needs to be implemented. They help us with a ton of different things. They help us with the technology of being able to be more effective on using our website to be interactive in terms of when people are doing searches, how to make sure that we're jumping into the top 3 no matter what location I am, depending on the needs I'm looking for. So you can apply those technologies to your own markets and your own facilities. The resources on it just in general helped us with our web design. It helped us a lot with how we manage our sales force on how they manage the interaction with different clients and those types of things. So just a very effective tool that had a very simple solution that we were able to implement that worked with our platforms. So the third thing, so this is an example of a system that we didn't outsource. So we had a legacy system. It's a proprietary database, and this is, kind of like the flux capacitor of our company. It really is one of the key elements about, what makes our operation work as well as it does, but it's been around for about 15 years. So there were things that were very important to us: the speed, the ability to adapt, the ability to customize it, and security. Those are the top things I worry about with one of the core elements of our system. And here's why it didn't work with the cloud, is that speed in the cloud is getting faster, but it gets down to the question is how fast is fast? So how fast do I need something? And the cloud works really well for a solution when you're sending stuff up to it. And this is what I've found so far is when you're sending a lot of information up, it handles volume of information going up really well. And then it starts costing you a lot of money when you need that information coming back down. So that's one of the gaps right now that you may want to think about depending on how fast you need something. So in an organization where I have a lot of users that are hitting up against that data very fast, very quickly, and they need really good today in that environment, where I have a back-end area that is more of a SQL Server-based kind of system. They have that up on the cloud, but the ability to adapt it and the ability to customize it hasn't quite caught up yet, but probably will in the next 3 to 5 years. So this is a technology that we decided that, you know what, here's the things that are important to my question. Here's the things that's important to my organization. The cloud in this case did not meet all the different steps that I needed it to really say that I can make a business argument that says that this makes a lot of sense to put on up there. So we decided to keep it in-house. Some of the other factors off of that is I already have the expertise in-house. I already have the ability to go ahead and adapt it. I already have the ability to do that. So those were some key factors that we took a look at. And in terms of expense, the expense on it really wasn't that much, because in this case, I own the software, so I don't need to worry about it as much. Now, what will happen probably 3 to 5 years from now, that technology will exist up on the cloud. The speed of pulling that information down will be much more scalable to what I need. And I like the idea of having the flexibility that the amount of expertise I have right now, if I was to lose those people tomorrow, I have the ability to outsource that and say I can just go to them with my business question, and they can scale it up or down based on what I need. And that's where it becomes very advantageous. So our fourth piece here, one of the things that we are constantly under pressure on is really the ability for reporting and transparency. So we work with a large base of clients, and there's a need that they want to understand information. They want to understand it real time. They want to be able to have a level of transparency to see what's going on with their stuff, and those are all very, very fair challenges. And so when you look at that, where I can't take my proprietary database and house it up on the cloud, I needed a solution that works well, that had a level of mobility for my clients, that they had the ability to access different levels of reporting, different levels of transparency of things that are going on with them, and figure out what's going on. And so this is where a hybrid solution worked out really well for us. So we worked with a cloud provider, and so what we do is we actually have it tied into our legacy system, and now we have uploads that happen not 100% real time, but within an hour. So within an hour we have information that's being loaded up, so you can see about as real time as we can kind of get it right now in terms of the changes that are going on with all the things that are happening. So when they come and they place accounts with us, they can look on it, and within an hour they know exactly everything that's been going on with those accounts. And so it becomes a very nice real-time creative solution that allows us to leverage the cloud versus our legacy system. So there was a marriage that said that, yeah, there was a level of compatibility to make sure that the two can shake hands with each other. The other piece of that was it allows us to go ahead and upload our information fairly real-time, and any one of the users out there can have access to it, but it's secure. So it uses 128-bit encryption out there, so it's extremely secure. And it was just a very, very elegant solution for us on something that fit a need that we had to adapt to with a changing industry. And up until 5 years ago, this whole thing on client reporting and transparency, it used to be reams of paper that you'd send on out. And this allows us to have a little bit more real-time capability, keep things electronic, and keep them secure. And it wasn't a need that was needed a while back, but this system we were able to put in, and we were able to implement it within a couple months. So not a long time in the world of ITIS in terms of systems and processes that you need to be able to implement, but became very elegant. So one of the things I hope you can kind of see here is that in each case we go through and we try and understand what the business question is. What is the point of pain that we're trying to solve? What is the need of the industry? What's the climate change of the industry that we're trying to figure out? And then we go and research it across multiple vendors, and we try and figure out which one's the best for us. But we want to make sure that it has a fit, that it fits within our platform, and that it's scalable. And if it can do all those things, then it works across the board for everybody. Okay, so now let's take a look about how this works in the healthcare industry. So we talked a little bit earlier that a lot of the needs and changes that are happening in the healthcare industry, high deductible plans, right? So this is something that has been, a big shift out in the industry in terms of where things are going, because the shift used to be that I wanted to make sure that I had to take care of the insurance company needs because that was my biggest payer that was out there. It's not necessarily the case anymore, right? So now you're moving to high deductible plans. So what you have now is instead of most of the needs being met by insurance plans, they're not. They're being met by high deductible plans. So it's being met by more of the individual consumers. So you're seeing a lot of things out there with concerned about consumer surveys of, patients that are coming in and how well are they being treated, because it's becoming almost like a retail model about how well are you retaining people, because some of the technology out there is changing what they're looking at. Things like telemed and virtual visits, right? So things that are dealing with chronic care management, things with checkups. These are things that we're seeing even in our company when we're taking a look and we're shopping our health plans that, yeah, we land on plans and we make sure that we have a high deductible plan, but one of the things that they're giving to us is this alternative that if you go and use these mobile apps, they're very cost effective. And for things that are non-emergency driven types of visits, it's extremely helpful because it's a very, very low cost alternative that people are actually looking at and considering. So it's a shift. It's a fundamental shift that I don't physically have to go on site anymore to go ahead and get a prescription or a medication for very fundamental illnesses and stuff like that used to be requiring an on-site visit. Comparative analysis, right? So comparative analysis is something that is basically, looking at overall population health and the ability to compare larger data sets going back and forth with each other. And it's another level of analysis that never really was leveraged as much as it is today, but that's becoming more of the capabilities that are out there. Collaborative sharing of information. So here's where we start taking a look at, one person being able to get shared expertise on overall case management, right? So it's a collaborative sharing model that, you hadn't seen as much of in the past. Home monitoring, enabled care is another one that's out there. So you're taking a look at mobile devices being able to be hooked up to devices that are at the home and being able to send that information real time to the providers, and to be able to set up triggers and warnings and things that are much more preventative in terms of overall health care. The ability to shop services. So the ability to shop services was never even concerned probably 5 or 10 years ago. The average person just went to the hospital or went to their provider and just got the x-ray or just got the lab work done. Nowadays, they're becoming more savvy. They're becoming more price conscious because they know the money's coming out of their pocket. So, they can shop those services. They can pick up kits, and they can go ahead and do some of these things on their own with the mobile devices and applications that are out there that never used to exist before. So anyone that's been over to the HFMA conference that was probably in the last year or two, they had a great presentation where the guy was up there and he was basically showing, probably about 20 or 25 different devices hooked up to smart devices that were technologies that never existed before, and the ability to go shop those technologies that never existed before. So those things are out there. It's a quick and changing environment. So things that were models that existed for, let's call it, the last 10 to 20 years, if you take a look at the last 3 to 5 years, how quickly that's changing, it's going to continue to change, and it's only going to continue to change much, much faster. If you think back to the Moore's Law that we were talking about, this is how fast things are going to start changing and evolving the industry. You're going to see very, very significant shifts in the consumer health population, and part of that's being driven by technology, and part of that is a shift of how healthcare is shifted out there, how plans are negotiated, and how they're being paid for. The consumer base just can't be ignored anymore, and that base is big enough now and being driven enough by technology that you have to be able to adapt it with your organization to figure out how to move with it. And the timeline is not 5 or 10 years anymore. You're talking about, you got 1 to 2 years to be able to figure out how to adapt and move with it if you want to stay on the cutting edge. So what I'd like to do now is we'll open up to questions and answers. I hope what I gave you was a pretty good high-level overview of cloud-based technology, so that you at least have a fundamental understanding of what it is. My main goal is to make sure that you can kind of understand how we kind of think through it as an organization and how we've kind of applied it within different areas and different aspects of it. And it's allowed us to go ahead and shift and change with the industry. So at this time, Don, I'll open it up for any questions that may come up that you may want to address with us.
Sure. Folks, if you could please get your questions into me as quickly as possible. We'll wait a couple minutes, but I'll start with the first question that we have in so far. How secure is the hybrid model as far as confidentiality of private information, and what methods are used to secure that information?
It's a good question. So on the hybrid model, we have a cloud-based system. That information is transmitted up with our SFTP protocol and it's 128-bit encryption, which is bank-level encryption. The hybrid model, there are user accounts that are set up within the organization, and those user passwords are set up by the users within that organization. So what we will do is we'll set up the individual accounts, and then the organization controls those accounts in terms of who has access, and they only have access to their information. So within any organization that we work with, we have a business associate agreement that allows us to make sure that we're allowed to kind of work back and forth with the information, but it's only protected and it's only visible to the partners that we have. So if I have an organization and they've given me files on a certain patient base, they're the only ones that are allowed to see those files. They're the only ones that have access to those files within their organization. They decide who the users are that have access, and they have a super user that's allowed to manage that on their side, and we have an administrator on our side that will help them manage that if they don't have a super user, so that it makes it a little bit easier to use for them. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, folks, if there's no, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. I'd just like to remind everyone that we will be sending the electronic version of the presentation out, and you can view the recording behind the members-only firewall. Thank you all again. Have a great day.